Alright everyone, today I'm taking a close look at the Kehosx Universal Truck Rack, something I bought myself on Amazon for $675. The photos and specs made it look like a steal, but I'm honestly expecting a few surprises once we get into the install. A rack that looks this solid usually comes with a much higher price tag, so let's dig in together and see what this thing is really made of. Before we get into the install, a quick note about the brand. Kehosx isn't a well-known company. They don't have a website, a history, or much public information. They mainly sell through Amazon as a factory direct brand. Most of what they offer are truck bed accessories, adjustable ladder racks like this one, overland-style bed racks, roll bars with cargo baskets, and a few Jeep and pickup add-ons. So real-world reviews matter, because Amazon listings are pretty much the only place you'll find them. As always, I'm not paid, sponsored, or affiliated with this company or any other. This is a completely honest evaluation from a regular consumer. I needed a new truck rack for a few reasons. First of all, I want something strong enough to haul my Perception Showdown kayak, which is a heavy boat once it's fully rigged. I also wanted the option of mounting a rooftop tent down the road in case I decide to camp overnight on my trips. I'm not at the age where sleeping on the ground feels like a good idea anymore, so having an elevated platform with a real mattress is starting to look pretty appealing. The truck rack arrived in a single box, well sealed and tightly strapped. It's a heavy package. You can feel the weight as soon as you try to move it, which actually gave me some confidence that the aluminum components inside weren't flimsy. Everything appears to be packed securely, and there's no visible damage from shipping. You can tell a lot about a company by how well they package their product. To me, good packaging shows a bit of pride in what they're sending out. And in this case, everything was packed extremely well, secure, organized, and protected. It gave me a solid first impression as I opened the box. As I opened it up, every piece is organized, protected, and separated so the metal parts can't scratch each other. Even the hardware is boxed neatly, which is something a surprising number of companies still don't bother with. It might seem like a small detail, but when you're buying something like a truck rack, those details matter. They set the tone for the whole install. I have over 40 years of experience as a mechanical designer, and over that time I've developed a very methodical way of installing equipment. So as I'm taking each component out of the box and laying everything out in an organized manner, I can't help but appreciate the quality of the parts. The welds look clean, the powder coat finish is smooth and even, and nothing looks rushed or cheaply made. When you've spent a lifetime working with mechanical assemblies, you notice these details instantly. The precision of the cuts, the way everything fits together before you even start the install. And honestly, going through each piece one by one, it's hard not to feel a bit of satisfaction. It's clear that some real care went into how this rack was built, and that gives me confidence. I haven't found any installation documentation yet, but I still have one more box to open. Sometimes companies tuck the instructions in with the hardware or the smaller components, so I'm hoping that's the case here. But let's check that last box before making any assumptions. There they are, tucked right at the side of the last box. The installation instructions. I had a feeling they'd show up eventually. Now that I've got the documentation in hand, I can go through everything properly and make sure the install goes exactly the way it should. The fasteners are boxed according to each assembly stage. Very nice. It might seem like a small detail, but when the hardware is organized like this, it makes the whole installation process smoother. Let's check out what they call the base bar. Though to me, this is really the vertical post. The top connection is an aluminum casting, which honestly surprised me in a good way. I wasn't expecting that level of refinement, and I'm very happy to see it. The powder coat finish is beautiful, smooth, and consistent, and the extrusions are accurately cut with decent welds. I also like that they added foam padding in the right places. The only thing I'm unsure about are the plastic components. Canadian weather is no joke, especially with the cold snaps we get up here, so I'm curious to see how well those parts hold up over the long term. Time will tell, but so far, the overall build quality has given me a good feeling. Really liking this hardware packaging. Makes the install so much smoother. With all the components checked and organized, we can move on to the installation. One quick note, my tonneau cover isn't compatible with this rack, and I'm not removing the locking brackets. Still, I'm expecting the fixed bases to fit cleanly around them. The fixed bases are symmetrical, so I don't need to worry about which one goes where. With that in mind, I took a moment to line everything up properly, and then went ahead and placed one in each of the 4 corners. Each base is held in place by 2 brackets, fastened with 12mm socket head screws. The brackets are nice and beefy, but they are aluminum, so I'm being mindful of the torque. It doesn't take much to damage a threaded hole if you go too far. Honestly, I would have preferred these brackets to be steel, especially since they went through the trouble of powder coating them. If this rack works out the way I hope, I can always upgrade the brackets later and have them machined in steel. That would give me the durability I prefer for long-term use. So, I go ahead and start installing the 2 brackets for this base, beginning at the driver's side rear of the truck box. I like starting at the back because it gives me a clear reference point for the rest of the install, and it lets me double-check how everything will interact with the tonneau cover hardware. The bracket that sits near to the cover's locking mechanism fits a little snug, but honestly, that's not a bad thing. Everything fits nicely without forcing anything into place. For this first base, I'm using the Allen key that comes with the kit, just to get a feel for how the hardware behaves and how much resistance the screws give. But once I know everything is threading smoothly, I'll switch over to my own tools for the rest of the installation. I trust my own tools a lot more than the ones that come in the box. This step sets the tone for the whole install, so I'm taking my time and making sure everything is aligned the way it should be. The base isn't sitting perfectly flush with the truck bed rail at this stage, but that's not something I'm worried about. Once the vertical posts are bolted in and the top rail ties everything together, the whole structure will place itself into alignment. The geometry of the rack should bring the bases down evenly, and everything should settle flat the way it's designed to. So for now, I'm just making sure the brackets are seated properly and moving on to the next step. So I move over to the passenger side and repeat the same process, but right away I notice the vertical post is sitting too far from the tailgate. That ends up wasting a good portion of the rack's usable length, so it's definitely something I want to adjust before tightening anything down. When I shift the base back toward the tailgate, I find that only one bracket lines up well enough to hold it in place. The second one just doesn't land where it needs to, but the bracket that does fit is pretty substantial. And since I'm already considering having new steel brackets machined later on, I'm fine installing just one bracket per base for now. It keeps everything stable while I move forward with the install. Alright, I'm happy with that location. Everything lines up the way it should, and the tailgate closes smoothly without touching anything, which is exactly what I was hoping for. So I'm confident with this setup, and I'm going to lock this position in and move on to the next step. So I head back over to the driver's side and shift the base to match the position I just set on the passenger side. Getting both sides to line up perfectly takes a bit of back and forth, but that's all part of the process. A little patience goes a long way here, especially when you're trying to keep everything square and consistent. Once both bases mirror each other, the whole setup starts to look much more intentional and balanced. Now, moving on to the front bases. I notice right away that I'm going to have to do the same thing here and run only one bracket per base. When I try to position the bases where I want them, only one bracket actually lands in a usable spot. But honestly, that's not a problem. The brackets are thick enough to hold things securely for now. And since I'm pretty sure I'll be getting a new set machined in steel later on, I'm fine with this setup. So let's get it done and keep the install moving. Now it's time to install the 4 vertical posts, or as they call them, the base bars. These go on pretty quickly, and the process is straightforward. Each post is secured with 3 M8 socket head screws, so once you line them up with the bases, it's just a matter of screwing everything in and snugging it down evenly. This is the part where the rack really starts to take shape, and you can finally see the structure coming together. For these posts, I noticed there are 2 different configurations, and each one has that 45-degree extrusion. You want that angle pointing toward the inside of the truck box. Setting them up this way makes sure the rack reaches its full usable length, so I take a moment to orient each post properly before tightening anything down. Each post has a graded ruler built right into it, which makes the vertical adjustment really easy. I'm pretty sure the markings are in inches, but honestly, it doesn't matter. The important thing is how quick it is to get all 4 posts set to the same height. I start them all at 21 to give myself a good baseline, and once I load the kayak on top, I'll fine-tune the height if I need to. Finally, I'm at the stage of installing the crossbars, and this is definitely the part where a little patience makes the whole job easier. What I've found works best is starting by installing the threaded internal flat bars onto each vertical post, but leaving them good and loose. You don't want them tight at this point, because that extra play gives you the wiggle room you need to slide the crossbar in without fighting the alignment. Once the bar is seated properly, and everything is sitting where it should, then I can go back, center it up, and snug all the hardware down evenly. Taking the time here really pays off in how clean the final fit looks. Once that's done, I slide the crossbar in from one side of the vertical post, making sure the flat bar feeds cleanly into the T-track of the extrusion. Then I work my way across to the next post, guiding it through until the whole bar sits approximately where I want it. This part definitely takes some patience and sometimes a little bit of force to get everything to settle into place. But by taking my time and easing it through each step, everything lines up the way it should in the end. Unfortunately, at this point, I'm so focused on the installation that I don't even notice my camera battery dies. I'm completely in the zone, lining everything up and making sure the fit is just right. So the footage cuts out for a moment here, but I just keep working through the process. Once I realize what happened, I swap the battery and pick up right where I left off. The crossbar has a graded ruler at each end, so setting the position is easy. I set both sides to 34 to keep everything centered and even. There's an end cap that fits into the ends of the crossbars, and they're simply tapped into place. Nothing complicated here, just a quick press fit to finish off the ends. The end cap is held in place with a single screw inside the track, but I'm not really comfortable with that. With the vibration from forestry roads and branches brushing against it on tight trails, that cap is eventually going to work itself loose. So I'm adding a self-tapping screw on each side of the cap just to lock it in. It's a small extra step, but it'll keep everything secure in the long run. And the last components to install are the sidebars. This part is really straightforward. Each one is held in place with 4 M6 socket head screws, 2 at each end. Both crossbars are completely symmetrical, so there's no confusion about which side anything belongs to. It's a quick, simple install that wraps up the structure nicely. I'm actually really surprised by how strong and tight these sidebars feel once they're bolted in. I have zero concerns about mounting gas or water tanks on them. They're solid. And with this setup, I'm definitely adding molly panels in the near future. These bars can handle it without a problem. To complete the installation, I go around and tighten all the fasteners, making sure everything is solid and ready to go. I'll keep an eye on all the connections over the next few weeks, just to make sure nothing works itself loose. A quick check here and there goes a long way. I'm really impressed with the overall quality of this rack and how straightforward the installation turned out to be. For the price, I honestly wasn't expecting something this solid, but it feels strong, tight, and well built from top to bottom. It's rare to get this much value without cutting corners somewhere. I can easily recommend it to anyone looking for a dependable truck rack. And heading into the fishing season, I'm looking forward to putting it to work. I'm confident it's going to handle everything I need without any issues.